In the next couple of days, the WNBA players are going to decide if they want to go on strike. And if they decide to go on strike, apparently that could be the end of the WNBA. The WNBA cannot come back.
The basketball world was sold a story for over a year. It was supposedly the pinnacle of women's basketball. Record-breaking expansion, an unstoppable ascent, and a sport at last prepared to compete with the men's league were all featured in headlines. Everyone continued to promote the same story. We had all been waiting for this moment. However, reality arrived and destroyed everything in front of everyone. Just 107,000 viewers watched the second season of Unrivaled on TNT. In contrast, the first episode of the previous season attracted 313,000 viewers. It wasn't just a terrible night, bad time, or unfortunate scheduling. It was a total freefall. A 65% decline in viewership in a single year, despite being on a big network that spent a lot of money on promotion, when any league loses almost 2/3 of its fans in a single year. It's not a blip. That's a conclusion from the market. For many people, this is where things become quite unpleasant. When Caitlin Clark is taken out of the picture, viewers just vanish. They absolutely disappear, neither gradually nor in part. The statistics don't lie, and they don't give a damn about good intentions, politics, or sentiments. This has nothing to do with bias or negativity. This data is unvarnished and self-evident. Everyone was duped by the illusion produced by Clark's presence last year. Media outlets persuaded themselves that the sport had reached a level playing field. They believed that fans were finally craving the goods and that new superstars had arisen. In reality, it was far more severe and more simpler. There was a brief rise caused by one extraordinary athlete. When you take her away, everything reverts to its initial state. Furthermore, the business model where it originated is seldom viable. The purpose of Unrivaled was to demonstrate the sport's breadth beyond a single player. That fans were committed to the game itself rather than a single exceptional player, and that they would attend events under several aliases. Rather, it showed the exact opposite. Players like Paige Beckers were heavily gambled on by the league, which promoted her as the next great thing in the sport. According to reports, she received about $348,000 for her participation. The payoff, those same $17,000 viewers, does not represent the emergence of star power. That is a real-time collapse of a marketing strategy. The figures get truly awful when you break this down as a pure business proposal. Before you even account for production costs, travel expenditures, staff wages, insurance facilities, and broadcast equipment, each viewer is effectively costing the operation several dollars. That is hardly a pathway for progress. That is financial quicksand disguised as advancement. TNT did not support Unrivaled out of altruism. They accepted the idea that women's basketball was now ready for prime time. That whole idea was completely undermined by those ratings. The fact that Unrivaled was never truly about basketball in the first place is something that most people overlooked. It had to do with generating leverage. The entire concept was intended to serve as a negotiating tool, providing WNBA players with a choice when negotiating contracts. The plan made sense. Players could demand better revenue sharing, larger compensation, and more protection if they had other options. It looked fantastic on paper. In actuality, it is falling more quickly than anyone had predicted. Leverage only works when your backup plan is truly effective. The safety net that demonstrated player value was meant to be unrivaled. Rather, it is confirming every uncertainty regarding market demand. Their negotiation position is weakened with every unsatisfactory telecast. Each failed rating gives owners more confidence. Recall how openly WNBA players discussed strikes a few weeks ago. They talked about demanding what they believed they had earned and refusing to be treated disrespectfully. These same sportsmen are now contemplating playing under the previous collective bargaining agreement, the transaction that they had previously deemed offensive, the same pay scale that they openly opposed. It wasn't because anyone had a change of heart that the drastic transformation occurred. It occurred as a result of reality ruining the celebration. 50% of net revenue, or profit after expenses, was given to WNBA players by the NBA. Almost all of the world's successful sports leagues function in this manner. Players objected to that and insisted on receiving 30% of total revenue, income prior to outlays. The league would lose an estimated $700 million under their plan, not gradually but right away. Just that number demonstrates how detached the demands had gotten from fundamental economics. This was hardly a strategic negotiation. This arrogance was motivated by the utterly erroneous notion that mainstream popularity had arrived. Without showing any mercy, the market just corrected that belief. Ratings are not negotiable. Advertisers are uncompromising. Storylines don't matter to investors. All that matters to them is attention that results in real money. On the largest platform it will ever be given, unrivaled failed that test terribly. The power dynamics become quite evident if the next season proceeds on the previous arrangement. Although owners now have all the cards, players still have the legal right to strike. There is no pressure to compromise, no fear of complete collapse, and no urgency to negotiate. The product is already having trouble attracting customers. Allow the players to move around and observe what transpires. That experiment was already conducted by Unrivaled, and the outcomes were disastrous. The unpleasant reality that no one wants to talk about is that the WNBA is not financially viable. It endures because the NBA consistently reimburses its losses. Billionaire owners have been spending money on public relations, community service, and long-term brand positioning for decades. However, there are breaking points in charity as well. Employee patience soon disappears when they want more while offering less. The largest error of all is revealed by the whole event. Caitlin Clark's personal popularity was mistaken by the players' union for league-wide value creation. A statistical aberration was mistaken for a long-term trend. An ecosystem as a whole is not elevated by a single generational talent, particularly when that environment displays animosity rather than growing around the asset. Audiences, data, ratings, and the stillness that follows all attest to Clark's absence on the screen. Reality does not compromise, negotiate, or yield to desires. It just expresses itself emotionlessly. And at the moment, it's exposing a league that mistook a fleeting moment for a long-lasting movement. The next event won't be spectacular or explosive. It will be far worse than that. It will be extremely embarrassing, quiet, and predictable. Players either strike and find out how little real leverage they have, or they accept something quite similar to the last collective Garum agreement. There isn't a third choice that is concealed. Those ratings have already shattered the illusion that ownership will panic and give up. When your opponent has demonstrated their inability to draw viewers, you don't engage in frantic negotiations. Players don't think a strike would end the league. It wouldn't compel emergency concessions or incite popular indignation. It would merely validate the market's preconceived notion that the product is entirely optional. What they weren't watching anyhow won't be missed by viewers. If a league doesn't move metrics, sponsors won't jump at the chance to save it. When reruns are equally successful, networks won't put any pressure on them. Any protest would be drowned out by the stillness. In contrast, Unrivaled has already written its own conclusion. It doesn't really matter if it formally closes after the season or continues to burn investor funds for a further year. Its main goal has already been totally unsuccessful. It was intended to show that there was demand outside of the WNBA. Rather, it demonstrated the complete opposite. There isn't a secret audience out there just waiting to be found. Networks are not ignoring any unexplored market. The product has received extensive marketing backing and has been frequently offered on many platforms with various stars. Every time, the response has been the same. The media narrative totally collapses at this point. Fans were informed for years that exposure was the issue. That audiences would show up if women's basketball was properly marketed. Unmatched exposure was obtained. Endless coverage, prime slots, and strong network support. The audience was still absent. Thus, visibility was never the issue. It was the demand itself. For gamers, the most devastating revelation is that they didn't fight hard enough for this time to come. It came about as a result of their basic misinterpretation of the issue at hand. You don't declare leverage. It's something you exhibit. Additionally, leverage disappears the moment your backup plan fails in public. Every bold statement turns into meaningless noise after that. The league was given a genuine once-in-a-generation opportunity, which makes this particularly heartbreaking. Unquestionably, Caitlin Clark's interest was quantifiable. Real momentum, real viewership figures, and real evidence that the ceiling could rise. For the first time, there was proof that women's basketball might achieve breakthrough popularity. The ecosystem broke apart rather than growing around that base. Smart strategy was replaced by resentment. Business sense was subordinated to ideology. Instead of focusing on what really worked, they insisted on treating what didn't work equally. That is not how markets operate. They have never done so and never will. Being close to demand does not get you money. You are paid for producing it. Furthermore, the evidence is glaringly obvious outside of Clark. Everything returns to baseline when she is removed from the equation. This does not imply that these athletes are unskilled or do not put in a great deal of effort. It simply means that the thing being sold isn't skill on its own. The product is attention. For this reason, rather than dramatic successes, the following phase will be characterized by stealthy retreats. As private negotiations start, public solidarity will wane. Individual safeguards will be granted to those who have voiced their support for unity the loudest. When mortgage payments are due, principles are rapidly compromised. When contracts are discussed, beliefs become softer. That isn't hypocrisy. That is the essence of human nature. Ownership is fully aware of this dynamic. Nothing needs to be rushed. Time is entirely on their side. The player's position gets weaker the longer the negotiations go on. The same conclusion is reinforced by each failed broadcast. Every opportunity lost reduces the number of options for moving forward. Acceptance eventually becomes unavoidable. Not because players were persuaded, but rather because alternatives completely vanished. The last irony is that league management didn't have to be hostile or reject any of this. The market took care of everything by itself. It eliminated illusions, revealed the distinction between visibility and true value, and made clear what motivates genuine interest as opposed to that which only feigns it. This ultimately has nothing to do with punishment or blame. It's about the unapologetic assertion of reality. There is currently a commercial ceiling for women's basketball, and it has a very specific name. Acting differently does not increase that ceiling. Data doesn't advance if it is ignored. Real change can only be achieved by developing around demonstrated demand. Everyone eventually picks up the same essential lesson.